Between jobs again. My mother Sarah sighed as she passed me another ornament for our Christmas tree. Dad nodded knowingly from his favorite armchair. Can't seem to keep steady work these days. I carefully hung the silver bell on a pine branch, thinking about how many Christmases we'd had this same conversation about Mom's career struggles. The familiar scent of cinnamon candles filled our suburban Denver living room, while snow gathered on the windows outside. Then, the CNN breaking news alert cut through our peaceful holiday evening like a knife. Breaking news. Mystery tech founder revealed as local woman, the announcer declared. I glanced at the television screen and froze completely. There was my mother accepting a gleaming business award. The ornament slipped from my fingers and shattered against the hardwood floor as I stared at the impossible image on our 55-inch television. There was Mom, dressed in an elegant navy blazer I had never seen before, shaking hands with some gray-haired executive while cameras flashed around them. The chyron beneath her image read, Sarah Mitchell, founder and CEO Technova Solutions. What the hell is this? I whispered, pointing at the screen with a trembling hand. Dad calmly continued arranging presents under the tree, as if absolutely nothing unusual was happening. The news anchor continued explaining how this mysterious entrepreneur had built a revolutionary software company from her basement over the past 5 years, taking it public just last week for an astounding $2 billion. Mom, that's you on television, I said, my voice rising with each word. They're calling you a tech billionaire. Sarah glanced at the screen and shrugged casually. Oh, that finally aired. I was wondering when they'd run the feature piece. My legs felt weak. I sank onto the burgundy couch, trying to process what was happening. Feature piece, Mom, you told me 20 minutes ago that you were between jobs. You've been complaining about unemployment for months. Well, technically, I'm not unemployed, she replied, reaching for another ornament from the cardboard box. I've been running Technova Solutions since 2019. All those job interviews you thought I was going to were actually board meetings and investor presentations. The room started spinning. 5 years. 5 entire years of lying to my face about the most basic facts of her professional life. I thought about all the times I'd offered to help her with her resume, all the encouraging speeches I'd given her about not giving up on her job search, all the guilt I'd felt about my own stable income while she supposedly struggled. Dad, did you know about this? I demanded. Robert Mitchell looked up from the gift wrap and nodded matter-of-factly. Your mother needed someone to help maintain the cover story. Couldn't have you getting suspicious when investors called the house, or when she had to travel for business conferences. Cover story. The words felt foreign in my mouth. You've both been lying to me for 5 years. We weren't lying, sweetie, Mom said, her tone infuriatingly calm. We were protecting you from unwanted attention and pressure. Do you have any idea what happens to families when this kind of wealth becomes public knowledge? Suddenly, everyone wants something from you. Friends change. Relationships become complicated. We wanted you to have a normal life. I stood up abruptly, knocking over the small table beside the couch. Normal. You call this normal? I've been feeling sorry for you, Mom. I've been worried about our family's finances. I offered to move back home to help with expenses. And we appreciated that offer, Dad interjected. But it wasn't necessary. Sarah's been covering your student loan payments for the past 2 years, and your car payments. We didn't want you to struggle while building your career. The room went silent, except for the television reporter's voice, explaining Technova's groundbreaking artificial intelligence software. Everything I thought I knew about my family's financial situation crumbled in that moment. The stress I'd felt about my loans, the careful budgeting, the part-time weekend job I'd taken to make extra payments, all completely unnecessary because my mother was secretly a billionaire. The house phone rang, breaking the heavy silence. Dad answered with his usual cheerful greeting. Robert Mitchell speaking. Oh, hello, Marcus. Yes, we saw the news coverage. Sarah's finally famous. He chuckled and handed the cordless phone to Mom. Marcus Thompson wants to congratulate you on the CNN feature. I recognize the name. Marcus was Dad's old college roommate who worked in tech investment. Apparently, he'd been in on the secret too. "Thanks, Marcus," Mom said into the phone. I know. We probably should have told Lowell sooner, but you understand how complicated these things can get." I walked to the window and stared out at the snow-covered street where I'd learned to ride my bike, where I'd played basketball with neighborhood kids, where everything had felt safe and predictable until 10 minutes ago. Now, even the familiar houses looked different, like props in a play I hadn't realized I was performing in. "How many people knew?" I asked when Mom finished her call. "Just a few close friends and business associates," she replied. "We kept the circle very small to protect your privacy." "My privacy? Or your ability to manipulate my life without interference?" Mom's expression hardened slightly. "That's unfair, Lowell. Everything we did was for your benefit. Do you think it was easy building a company while pretending to be unemployed? Do you know how many meetings I had to schedule around your visits home? How many business trips I had to disguise as job interviews?" I turned back to face her, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was looking at a complete stranger. The woman who had raised me, who had taught me about honesty and integrity, who had emphasized the importance of trust in relationships, had spent 5 years constructing an elaborate lie about the most fundamental aspect of her identity. The CNN report ended, and a commercial for holiday car sales began playing. The jarring normalcy of the advertisement felt surreal after what I'd just learned. I realized that tomorrow I would have to go back to my apartment, back to my job, back to my life carrying this massive secret about my family. Or maybe it wasn't a secret anymore. Maybe everyone would know soon. "Is there anything else you want to tell me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Any other major life details you've been hiding?" Mom and Dad exchanged a glance that made my stomach clench with dread. "Well," Mom said slowly, "there might be a few more things we should discuss. I called in sick to work the next morning, which was technically true, since I felt physically ill from the emotional upheaval. Instead of heading to my job at Bradley & Associates marketing firm, I spent the morning in my downtown Denver apartment, researching everything I could find about Technova Solutions and my mother's secret career. What I discovered made me feel even worse. Sarah Mitchell had been featured in Forbes Fortune and Harvard Business Review over the past 8 months. There were interviews where she discussed her innovative management philosophy, her commitment to ethical technology development, and her plans for expanding into international markets. In one particularly painful article from September, she mentioned having a son who doesn't know about the business yet, and how she looked forward to eventually bringing him into the company when the timing is right. The timing is right, as if my entire life path was something she got to decide. I found video interviews where she spoke eloquently about work-life balance and the importance of family relationships. The irony was suffocating. Here was a woman preaching about authentic communication while living a complete double life at home. Around noon, I drove to Bradley & Associates, feeling paranoid and suspicious about everything in my life. The job I'd landed 2 years ago had seemed like such a stroke of luck at the time. I'd interviewed well, but there were more qualified candidates. Janet Bradley had hired me anyway, saying she had a good feeling about my potential. Now I wondered if that good feeling had come with a phone call from my billionaire mother. I found Janet in her corner office reviewing campaign proposals. She was a sharp woman in her 40s who had built the firm from nothing into one of Denver's most respected marketing companies. "Lowell, you look terrible," she said when I knocked on her doorframe. "Are you feeling better?" "Actually, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Janet set down her papers and gestured for me to sit. "Of course. What's going on? Did my mother have anything to do with you hiring me?" The pause before her answer told me everything I needed to know. "Why are you asking?" Janet said carefully. "Because I found out last night that my unemployed mother is actually the billionaire CEO of Technova Solutions, and I'm starting to think my entire adult life has been orchestrated without my knowledge." Janet's shoulders sagged slightly. "Sarah asked me not to mention her involvement, but yes, She recommended you for the position. She's been a silent investor in our firm for 3 years. She believed you had genuine talent and wanted you to have an opportunity to prove yourself. The office walls felt like they were closing in. Has she been checking on my performance? Quarterly reviews, Janet admitted. She never interfered with my management decisions, but she liked to know how you were developing professionally. And she did suggest your promotion to senior account coordinator last spring. I put my head in my hands. Even my professional achievements were tainted by my mother's invisible influence. Lowell, for what it's worth, you've earned everything you've accomplished here, Janet continued. Sarah may have opened the door, but you walked through it with your own skills and effort. You're genuinely good at this work. But was I? Or had I succeeded? Because my boss knew that disappointing me meant disappointing a major investor. How could I trust any feedback or evaluation when everyone involved had been protecting me from the truth? I left work early and drove to Emma's apartment in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. Emma Rodriguez was my girlfriend of 18 months, and she was one of the few genuinely positive things in my life that I believed had developed naturally. We'd met at a Bradley and Associates networking event, and our relationship had grown slowly and organically. Or so I'd thought. Emma answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. She was beautiful in that effortless way that had first attracted me, but today I was looking at her with new suspicion. "You're home early," she said, stepping aside to let me into her cozy one-bedroom apartment. "How are you feeling?" "Like my entire life is a lie," I replied. "Did you know about my mother's company?" Emma's face went pale. She sat heavily on her gray sectional sofa. "I was wondering when this would come out," she said quietly. "So you knew you've known this whole time that I thought my mother was unemployed, when she's actually worth $2 billion. "I thought you knew and just didn't want to talk about it," Emma said defensively. "I mean, who keeps that kind of secret from their own son? I assumed you were just being private about your family's wealth." I paced around her small living room, trying to process this new betrayal. "How long have you known?" "Since we started dating seriously. My friend Julie works in tech PR, and she mentioned Technova's mysterious CEO. When she showed me Sarah's photo from a conference, I recognized her from pictures at your apartment." "And you never thought to mention this to me?" "In 18 months of dating." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know how to bring it up. I was afraid you'd think I was only interested in you for your family's money. I loved you for who you are, not for what your mother does." "But you've been lying to me for over a year." "I haven't been lying. I just didn't volunteer information that I thought you already knew." I sat down across from her, feeling exhausted and confused. "Emma, is there anything else I should know? Any other connections to my mother or her business?" She was quiet for a long moment, which was answer enough. "What is it?" I demanded. "Technova offered me a job last month," she whispered. "Head of digital marketing. I haven't given them an answer yet because I wasn't sure how you'd feel about it." I stared at her in disbelief. "My mother offered you a job. Did you apply there?" "They reached out to me. Said they were impressed with my work at the environmental nonprofit and wanted to bring me on board. The salary is almost double what I'm making now." "And it never occurred to you that this might be connected to your relationship with me?" "Of course it occurred to me, but the position is legitimate. I'm qualified for the role." I stood up and grabbed my jacket from the coat rack by her door. "I can't do this right now. I can't figure out what's real and what's been manipulated." "Lowell, wait," Emma called as I headed for the door. "Our relationship is real. My feelings for you are real." "But how can I know that? How can I trust anything when everyone around me has been keeping secrets or accepting benefits from my mother's company? Even my job was arranged by her. Even my girlfriend is being recruited by her. What part of my adult life has actually been mine?" I left Emma crying on her couch and drove aimlessly around Denver for 2 hours, trying to figure out if there was anyone in my life who didn't know more about my family situation than I did. That evening, I called my younger sister Kelly, who lived in Colorado Springs with her husband Tom. Kelly had always been the more perceptive one in our family, and I hoped she might have some insight into what was happening. "Did you know about Mom's company?" I asked without preamble when she answered. "I suspected something was off," Kelly replied. She was always too calm about money for someone who was supposedly unemployed. And those business clothes she sometimes left in her car didn't match someone who was just going to job interviews. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I figured if Mom wanted to tell us, she would. And honestly, I've been avoiding family gatherings lately because something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what." At least Kelly's instincts had been protecting her from the deception. I felt foolish for being so trusting, so willing to believe the stories my parents had constructed. "Are you okay?" Kelly asked. "You sound really shaken up." "I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know if any of the relationships or opportunities in my life have developed naturally, or if they've all been influenced by Mom's hidden wealth and connections." "That must be terrifying," Kelly said gently. "But you know what, you're still the same person you were yesterday. Your character, your talents, your personality. None of that changes, because Mom turned out to be a secret CEO. But how do I know which of my achievements I actually earned? Because I know you, and you've always worked hard for everything. Maybe Mom opened some doors, but she couldn't make you into someone you weren't." After hanging up with Kelly, I sat in my apartment looking at the Christmas gifts I'd bought for my parents. I'd spent weeks choosing meaningful presents on my modest budget, wanting to show them how much I appreciated their love and support during what I thought were difficult financial times for our family. Now those gifts felt like artifacts from someone else's life, evidence of my own naivety and my parents' willingness to accept my sympathy while sitting on a fortune. I realized I had no idea who my mother really was, or what else she might be hiding. If she could keep a $2 billion company secret for 5 years, what other deceptions might she be capable of? The next afternoon, I drove to my parents' house with a strange mission in mind. I had a spare key from my college years, and I knew they'd be out shopping for last-minute Christmas supplies. I needed to see if there were any signs of Mom's secret business operations that I'd somehow missed during hundreds of visits home. The house looked exactly the same as it had my entire life. A modest, 2-story colonial in a middle-class neighborhood with beige siding and brown shutters. Nothing about the exterior suggested that a billionaire lived there. But then again, I was learning that appearances meant nothing when it came to my family. I started in the basement, which had always been Dad's workshop and storage area. Behind his old workbench, I noticed something I'd never paid attention to before. A section of the wood-paneled wall that didn't quite match the rest. When I pushed on it, a hidden panel slid aside to reveal a sophisticated home office setup. 3 large monitors sat on a custom-built desk, alongside professional lighting equipment and a high-end video camera. Filing cabinets lined one wall, and a small conference table occupied the corner with chairs for 6 people. This wasn't just a home office. It was a corporate command center disguised behind movable walls. My hands shook as I explored the space. Everything looked expensive and recently used. Coffee cups sat on the desk, and papers were scattered across the conference table. This room had been active while I'd been upstairs for family dinners, completely oblivious to what was happening 20 feet below. I opened the desk drawers and found something that made my blood run cold. A collection of SD cards labeled with dates spanning the past 5 years. The labels were written in Mom's handwriting. Thanksgiving 2019. Lowell's birthday, 2020. Easter, 2021. And dozens more. With trembling fingers, I inserted one of the cards into the computer and opened the files. Video footage began playing, and I watched myself from last Thanksgiving, sitting at our dining room table, talking about my job stress and relationship concerns. The camera angle suggested it had been filmed from somewhere near the kitchen, probably hidden in a decorative item I'd never questioned. I loaded another card and saw Emma and me in the living room during her first visit to meet my parents. The footage captured our private conversations, including moments when she'd confessed her nervousness about making a good impression and her concerns about our relationship moving too fast. Card after card revealed the same horrifying reality. My mother had been secretly recording my personal life for years. Holiday gatherings, casual visits, phone calls from the house landline, even quiet conversations I'd had with Dad when I thought Mom was out of earshot. Everything had been documented and stored like research data. I found a folder on the computer labeled documentary footage and opened it with dread. Inside were hours of professionally edited video showing my life over the past 2 years. Someone had crafted a narrative arc from the raw footage, creating a story about a young man building his career, while his entrepreneurial mother secretly supported him from behind the scenes. The editing was sophisticated with multiple camera angles and professional quality sound. This wasn't amateur home video. It was a production. Digging deeper into the computer files, I discovered a signed contract with Streamvision, a major streaming platform, for a documentary series called Building Empire Raising Family: The Secret CEO Mom. The contract was dated 6 months ago and included payment terms for $3 million upon completion. According to the production timeline, the show was scheduled to premiere next month. The marketing materials described it as an intimate look at how one mother balanced building a tech empire with raising confident, independent children who never knew about her secret success. I was the unwitting star of a reality show that would broadcast my most private moments to millions of viewers. Phone records in a desk file showed regular communication between Mom and someone named Amanda Foster, listed as the documentary's executive producer. Their email exchanges, which I accessed through Mom's logged-in account, revealed months of collaboration on storylines and character development. In one particularly disturbing email Mom had written, "Lowell's relationship with Emma provides excellent material for the young love subplot. His concerns about his career trajectory show how well our strategy is working. He's developing independence and confidence without knowing about the safety net we've provided." Another message described me as the perfect case study for how successful parenting produces ambitious, self-reliant children, and discussed which of my personality traits would be most appealing to viewers. I found myself described like a character in a television show, rather than a real person with private thoughts and feelings. The basement door opened, and I heard footsteps upstairs. Mom and Dad had returned from shopping. I quickly closed the computer programs and slipped out through the basement's exterior door, my mind reeling from what I'd discovered. I drove straight to Dad's office downtown, where he worked as an insurance adjuster. I waited in the parking lot until he came out for his afternoon coffee break. "Dad, I need to talk to you," I said, approaching him near his car. He looked surprised to see me. "Lowell, what are you doing here? Is everything okay?" I found the basement office. I saw the cameras and the documentary contract. "How long has Mom been filming me?" Dad's face went pale, and he looked around the parking lot, as if checking for witnesses to our conversation. "Let's sit in my car," he said quietly. Once we were inside his sedan, Dad rubbed his face with both hands before speaking. "The camera started about 3 years ago," he admitted. "Sarah said it was just for security at first. Then she mentioned wanting to document family memories. I didn't realize she was planning a commercial documentary until last year." "And you're okay with this? You're okay with her violating my privacy and selling footage of my personal life?" "I'm not okay with it," Dad said firmly. "I've been increasingly uncomfortable with the whole situation, but your mother can be very persuasive when she believes she's doing something beneficial for the family." "Beneficial, Dad? She's been treating me like a lab rat. She's been recording my private conversations and using them for entertainment content." "I know how it looks, but Sarah genuinely believes this will be good for your career. She thinks the documentary will open doors and create opportunities." "What if I don't want those doors opened? What if I don't want my private life broadcast to strangers?" Dad was quiet for a moment. "I've tried to discuss that with her, but she's convinced that you'll be excited about the opportunity once you understand the potential benefits. She plans to surprise me with this as a Christmas gift, That was her intention, yes. I stared out the windshield at the office building where Dad had worked for 15 years, wondering how many other aspects of my family's life were carefully constructed illusions. Dad, I need you to be honest with me about something else. Has Mom been controlling other parts of my life that I don't know about? He sighed heavily. She's been more involved in your career development than you realize. The job at Bradley and Associates, your promotion, even Emma's job offer. Sarah has been pulling strings behind the scenes because she wants to see you succeed. But doesn't she understand that her interference makes it impossible for me to know what I've actually accomplished on my own merit? I've tried to explain that to her, but she sees herself as providing opportunities, not controlling outcomes. In her mind, she's being a supportive parent. I left Dad in the parking lot and spent the evening walking around downtown Denver, trying to process the magnitude of my mother's deception. She hadn't just lied about her career. She'd been systematically documenting and manipulating my life while planning to profit from the footage. The woman I'd trusted most in the world had turned me into unwilling entertainment content, and she apparently believed this was an act of love. 3 days before Christmas, I was having dinner with Emma and some college friends at Murphy's Sports Bar, trying to pretend that my life wasn't completely unraveling. Emma and I had talked extensively since our difficult conversation, and, while things between us remained tense, we were attempting to work through the trust issues created by my family's deceptions. The restaurant was crowded with people watching the Sunday night football game on the multiple screens mounted around the dining area. I was halfway through a burger when the halftime show began, and suddenly, my face appeared on every television in the restaurant. The trailer for Building Empire Raising Family played for 2 excruciating minutes, featuring highlights from the past 2 years of my life. There, I was complaining about Mom's unemployment while she secretly ran a billion-dollar company. There was Emma discussing her feelings about our relationship during what she'd thought was a private moment in my parents' living room. There were intimate conversations about my insecurities, my career goals, and my financial worries. The production quality was slick and professional, with dramatic music and engaging editing that made my personal struggles look like compelling television drama. A narrator's voice explained how viewers would get an unprecedented look into the life of a tech empire builder and the son who never knew her secret. My friends Jake Harrison and Bethany Cooper stared at the screens in shock, then turned to look at me with expressions of confusion and concern. "Dude, is that you?" Jake asked. "Are you about to be famous?" Before I could answer, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, social media mentions, and emails poured in as people who'd seen the trailer began reaching out. Within minutes, I had messages from high school classmates, college friends, former coworkers, and complete strangers who'd somehow found my contact information. "I can't believe this is happening," I muttered, scrolling through the avalanche of notifications. Emma grabbed my hand across the table. "We should leave, now!" But it was too late. Other patrons in the restaurant had recognized me from the trailer and were pointing and whispering. Someone took a photo of me with their phone, and I realized that my private life had just become public entertainment for millions of people. We left the restaurant and drove to Emma's apartment in silence. By the time we arrived, hashtags like TechMomSon and Secret CEO Kid were already trending on social media. People were sharing clips from the trailer, speculating about my family's wealth, and offering opinions about my mother's parenting methods. "I feel sick," I said, sitting on Emma's couch with my head in my hands. "Millions of people just watched my private conversations without my permission." Emma sat beside me, her own face pale with shock. "I can't handle this kind of attention, Lowell. I'm a private person, and now my personal thoughts are going to be broadcast to strangers." My phone rang. Janet Bradley was calling from home on a Sunday night, which was never a good sign. "Lowell, I just saw the documentary trailer," she said when I answered. "Reporters have been calling the office asking for interviews about your work performance and your relationship with your mother. This is going to create complications for the firm." "I didn't know about the documentary," I explained. My mother filmed me without my consent. I understand that, but the situation is still going to affect our business. We need to discuss how to handle this appropriately. After ending the call, I realized that my mother's secret project wasn't just violating my privacy. It was potentially damaging the careers and reputations of everyone around me. Emma stood up and began pacing around her small living room. I can't do this, Lowell. I can't be in a relationship that comes with this level of public scrutiny and media attention. This isn't what I signed up for. But it's not my fault, I protested. I'm as much a victim of this as you are. I know that, but knowing it doesn't change the reality of what my life is going to become if that documentary airs. I'll be known as the girlfriend of the tech billionaire's son. My privacy is gone. My relationship with you will be analyzed by strangers, and I'll probably lose my current job because of the media circus. She was right, and I couldn't blame her for protecting herself from a situation she'd never chosen to be part of. I need some time to think, Emma said gently. This is too much for me to process right now. I drove home to my apartment feeling completely alone. My phone continued buzzing with messages and calls, so I finally turned it off and sat in the dark, trying to figure out how my life had become so completely unrecognizable. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house in a rage unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I found Mom in the kitchen, making coffee as if nothing unusual had happened. "Good morning, sweetie," she said cheerfully. "Did you see the trailer last night? The production company did such a beautiful job with the editing." "Are you insane?" I shouted. "You violated my privacy. You filmed me without consent, and now millions of people have seen my personal conversations. How could you think I'd be anything but furious?" Mom looked genuinely surprised by my anger. "But this is going to be wonderful for your career, Lowell. Think about the opportunities this exposure will create. You'll be able to write your own ticket in the marketing world. I don't want those opportunities if they come from exploiting my private life. I don't want to be famous for being your unknowing test subject." Test subject. Is that really how you see this? I documented our family's journey because it's an inspiring story about love support and success. People will relate to your experience of building independence while having a strong family foundation. But I didn't consent to sharing that experience with the world. You made that decision for me, just like you made the decision to hide your company, just like you made the decision to manipulate my job opportunities. Dad walked into the kitchen during our argument, and I could see the guilt and discomfort on his face. "Robert, please explain to your son how much work went into creating this beautiful documentary about our family," Mom said. "Sarah, I think we need to listen to Lowell's concerns," Dad replied quietly. "His concerns. This documentary is going to premiere next month on one of the biggest streaming platforms in the world. Do you know how many families would kill for this kind of opportunity? But it's not their choice to make," I said. "It's mine, and I'm telling you that I don't want my private life turned into public entertainment." Mom's expression hardened. "After everything I've done to support your career and provide opportunities for your future, this is how you show your gratitude, by attacking me for trying to share our success story with the world. Your success story, not mine. I didn't build a tech company. I didn't choose to live a double life. I didn't agree to be filmed. This is your story, and you've made me an unwilling character in it." The kitchen door opened, and my sister Kelly walked in with her husband Tom Brennan. They'd driven up from Colorado Springs after seeing the trailer. "We need to talk," Kelly announced. "All of us." She set her purse on the counter and looked directly at Mom. "I've been avoiding family gatherings for the past year because I could tell something was wrong, but I never imagined it was anything like this." "Kelly, honey, I know this is a lot to process," Mom began. "No, Mom, you don't get to minimize this. You violated Lowell's privacy and trust in ways that are probably illegal. You turned our family relationships into a business venture without asking for our consent." Tom, who worked as a paralegal, spoke up for the first time. "Sarah, I looked into the legal implications of what you've done, and Lowell might have grounds for several different types of lawsuits against you and the production company. Lawsuits. Mom's voice rose with indignation. Against his own mother, for trying to create opportunities and share our family's inspiring story. For invasion of privacy, unauthorized use of his likeness, and potentially wiretapping violations depending on how the recordings were made. Tom continued. The room fell silent, except for the sound of coffee brewing. I realized that my family was fracturing in real time, and the documentary trailer was just the beginning of the damage Mom's deceptions would cause. I want the documentary stopped, I said firmly. I want all footage of me destroyed, and I want an explanation of exactly how long you've been recording my private conversations. The documentary premiere is scheduled for next month, Mom replied. Thousands of people are looking forward to seeing it. I can't just cancel a major production because you're having second thoughts. Second thoughts. I never had first thoughts, because you never asked for my permission. Kelly put her arm around my shoulders. We'll figure this out, Lowell. But right now, I think we should leave and let Mom and Dad think about what they've done. As we walked toward the door, I turned back to look at my parents. Dad appeared miserable and defeated, while Mom stood with her arms crossed, clearly believing that she was the victim of ungrateful family members who couldn't appreciate her grand gesture. I realized that the mother I'd thought I knew had never really existed. The real Sarah Mitchell was someone who valued control and success more than honesty and respect, someone who could violate her own son's privacy while genuinely believing she was acting out of love. The next morning, I sat in the downtown office of Patricia Wells, one of Denver's most respected privacy law attorneys. Kelly had found Patricia through Tom's legal connections, and she'd agreed to meet with me on short notice after learning about the documentary situation. Patricia was a sharp woman in her 50s, with silver hair and intelligent eyes that immediately made me feel like someone was finally taking my situation seriously. I've reviewed the trailer footage and the information your brother-in-law provided, she said, spreading documents across her conference table. What your mother did violates several Colorado state privacy laws and potentially federal wiretapping statutes. Can we stop the documentary from airing? We can certainly try. The footage was obtained without your consent, which makes it illegally gathered evidence. The streaming platform could face significant liability if they proceed with the premiere. Patricia explained that Colorado's privacy laws were particularly strong when it came to recording conversations in private residences. The fact that Mom had secretly filmed me in what I believed was the safety of my family home created multiple legal violations. I want to file an emergency injunction to prevent the documentary's release, I said. And I want to explore every possible legal remedy for what she's done to me. Before we proceed, I need you to understand that suing your mother will likely destroy your family relationships permanently. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the years of lies, the manipulation of my career, the violation of my privacy, and the complete disregard for my right to consent to public exposure. My family relationships were destroyed the moment she decided to treat me like a business asset instead of her son, I replied. Patricia filed the emergency injunction that afternoon, and within hours, the legal action became public knowledge. Streamvision's legal team immediately began damage control, and entertainment reporters started covering the story as a fascinating clash between family loyalty and privacy rights. During the legal discovery process, Patricia's investigators uncovered evidence that made my situation even worse. Mom hadn't just recorded conversations in the main living areas. She'd installed cameras and recording equipment throughout the entire house, including in guest bathrooms and bedrooms where Emma and I had stayed during overnight visits. The scope of the surveillance is extraordinary, Patricia reported during our second meeting. Your mother documented virtually every moment you spent in that house over the past 3 years. Even more disturbing, the investigation revealed that Mom had recorded phone calls from the house landline and had installed tracking software on devices that connected to the home Wi-Fi network. She'd been monitoring my internet activity, text messages, and email communications whenever I visited. This goes far beyond documenting family memories, Patricia said. This is systematic surveillance that would be illegal if conducted by law enforcement without a warrant. The legal discovery also revealed that Technova Solutions had provided some of the surveillance technology Mom used for spying on our family. The company's own products had been used to violate my privacy, which raised serious ethical questions about Sarah's leadership and judgment. When this information became public, Technova's stock price dropped 20% in a single day, as investors worried about potential legal liabilities and the CEO's moral character. Business ethics experts began questioning Sarah's fitness to lead a technology company, and several of her business partners demanded explanations for her decisions. I started receiving calls from privacy rights advocates who wanted to support my case. The Electronic Frontier Foundation offered legal assistance, and several prominent technology ethicists wrote articles about my situation as an example of how surveillance technology could be misused, even by well-intentioned family members. Emma reached out to express her support for the lawsuit and to reveal that she was considering her own legal action. Mom had recorded dozens of private conversations between us, including intimate discussions about our relationship and our personal histories that we'd shared while believing we were in a safe private space. "I feel so violated," Emma told me over coffee. "I trusted your parents, and they were secretly documenting my most personal thoughts and feelings." Streamvision quietly canceled the documentary premiere to avoid the legal complications, but the damage to my privacy had already been done. The trailer had revealed enough personal information to make my life permanently different. I began giving interviews to privacy rights organizations and technology publications explaining how surveillance technology could be misused and emphasizing the importance of consent in family relationships. My story became a case study in digital ethics courses at several universities. The irony wasn't lost on me that Mom's attempt to make me famous had succeeded, but not in the way she'd intended. I was becoming known as an advocate for privacy rights rather than as the supportive son of a tech billionaire. Meanwhile, Mom's reputation in the business community continued to deteriorate. Technova's board of directors called an emergency meeting to discuss her leadership, and several major investors expressed concerns about having a CEO who'd used company resources for personal surveillance projects. Patricia estimated that we could win a settlement of several $1,000,000 and potentially send Mom to prison for multiple felonies related to illegal recording and invasion of privacy. "Your mother's actions were systematic and deliberate," Patricia explained. "This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It was years of planned surveillance and privacy violations." The legal pressure was also affecting Mom's business empire. Partners and investors were distancing themselves from her, and the company's reputation was suffering from the association with her personal scandals. I realized that by fighting back against Mom's control and manipulation, I was not only protecting my own rights, but also holding her accountable for behavior that could have affected many other people if left unchecked. For the first time since discovering her deceptions, I felt like I was taking control of my own life and making decisions based on my own values, rather than her hidden agenda. As my lawsuit progressed through the courts, Patricia's investigators uncovered evidence that transformed my personal legal case into a corporate scandal. Technova Solutions had provided equipment and personnel to support Mom's surveillance operation with company employees, helping install cameras and edit documentary footage during business hours. "Your mother used corporate resources for personal projects," Patricia explained during a meeting in early January. "She paid Technova staff to work on the documentary, using company funds, which violates her fiduciary duty to shareholders." This revelation opened Mom to additional charges of corporate fraud and misappropriation of funds. The Securities and Exchange Commission launched an investigation into whether she'd violated federal laws governing publicly traded companies. The Technova Board of Directors, led by partner Michael Chen, called an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to remove Sarah as CEO, pending the outcome of multiple legal investigations. Jennifer Walsh, the former chief technology officer, was appointed as interim CEO and immediately began implementing damage control measures. The board cannot stand behind leadership that has demonstrated such poor judgment and disregard for legal and ethical boundaries, Michael Chen announced in a press statement. We are committed to restoring Technova's reputation and ensuring that this kind of behavior never happens again. The board also froze Mom's stock options and launched an internal audit to determine the full extent of her misuse of company resources. Early findings suggested that she'd spent over $200,000 in company money on surveillance equipment and documentary production costs. Dad finally found the courage to stand up to his wife. He filed for legal separation and moved in temporarily with his brother Frank Patterson, who lived across town. For the first time in their 30-year marriage, Robert was prioritizing his own moral compass over Sarah's persuasive arguments. I can't be married to someone who would violate our son's privacy so systematically, Dad told me during a painful conversation at Frank's house. I should have stopped her years ago, but I kept hoping she would come to her senses. Dad agreed to testify in my lawsuit, providing crucial evidence about Mom's escalating controlling behavior over the years. He revealed that she'd begun monitoring my social media accounts when I was in college and had been tracking my location through various apps on my phone for years. Kelly publicly supported my legal case through social media posts that went viral, sharing her own experiences with Mom's manipulative behavior and expressing pride in my decision to fight back against family abuse. My brother is showing incredible courage by standing up to someone who was supposed to protect him, but instead exploited him. Kelly wrote on Facebook, "No parent has the right to violate their child's privacy for profit, regardless of their intentions." The family house was searched by federal investigators, who found additional recording equipment hidden throughout the property, including devices in places I'd never suspected. They also discovered financial records showing irregular payments to documentary crew members and surveillance equipment vendors. Mom's personal attorney advised her to settle my lawsuit quickly to minimize her criminal exposure, but she refused to admit wrongdoing or accept responsibility for the harm she'd caused. "I did everything for my family's benefit," she told a reporter outside the courthouse. "History will vindicate my actions when people understand the opportunities I was trying to create." Her continued defiance only made the legal situation worse. Prosecutors viewed her lack of remorse as evidence that she might commit similar crimes in the future, which strengthened their case for serious criminal charges. Media coverage of the scandal intensified when other Technova employees came forward with stories of Sarah's invasive management style and boundary violations in the workplace. Several former staff members reported that she'd monitored their personal communications and had used company surveillance technology to track their activities outside of work. Working for Sarah Mitchell was like being under constant surveillance, one former employee told a business journalist. She justified it as caring about our well-being, but it felt more like being controlled than being supported. The scandal became a cautionary tale in business ethics courses and privacy law discussions. My case was cited in congressional hearings about surveillance technology regulation and corporate accountability. Emma and I began rebuilding our relationship on a foundation of complete honesty about our experiences with Mom's manipulation. We attended counseling together to work through the trust issues created by years of deception and privacy violations. "I want to start over with you," Emma told me during one of our sessions. "I want a relationship based on truth and mutual respect, not one that's been influenced by your mother's agenda." I started receiving job offers from companies that appreciated my stance on privacy rights and ethical business practices. Several tech firms wanted to hire me specifically because of my experience as a surveillance victim and my advocacy for digital privacy protections. Patricia informed me that we now had enough evidence to win a settlement of $8 to $10 million, and that federal prosecutors were preparing to file criminal charges against Mom that could result in significant prison time. "Your mother's business empire is collapsing because of her personal choices," Patricia observed. "She built Technova on principles of ethical technology development. but her own behavior contradicted everything the company claimed to stand for. For the first time since discovering Mom's deceptions, I felt like justice was actually possible. The woman who had controlled and manipulated my life for years was finally facing real consequences for her actions, and I was reclaiming my right to privacy and autonomy. The legal victory felt especially meaningful because it wasn't just about money. It was about establishing that family relationships must be built on respect and consent, not control and surveillance regardless of the perpetrator's claimed good intentions. The lawsuit concluded in March, with Mom agreeing to a comprehensive settlement that addressed both the personal harm she'd caused and the broader implications of her surveillance activities. She paid $8 million in damages to avoid criminal prosecution on multiple felony charges related to illegal recording privacy violations and corporate fraud. As part of the settlement agreement, Sarah was required to undergo mandatory counseling for controlling behavior and was prohibited from contacting me for 2 years without court supervision. All footage of me and my private conversations was ordered destroyed under judicial oversight, with severe penalties for any violation of the destruction order. Technova Solutions contributed an additional $2 million to establish the Digital Privacy Rights Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping families dealing with technological surveillance and control issues. I accepted a position on the foundation's board of directors, using my experience to help other people who'd been victims of family surveillance. The remaining Technova leadership, now under Jennifer Walsh's ethical guidance, implemented strict privacy policies and contributed ongoing funding to digital rights advocacy. The company's reputation gradually recovered as Jennifer demonstrated a commitment to genuine ethical technology development. Sarah permanently lost her position as CEO and was forced to sell most of her Technova stock to pay legal fees, settlements, and fines. She relocated to a small town in Montana, where she started a modest consulting practice, focusing on small business development rather than high-tech innovation. Before leaving Denver, Mom completed her court-ordered counseling program and wrote a public letter acknowledging her violations of family trust and privacy. While the letter felt somewhat forced and legalistic, it represented the first time she'd admitted that her actions had been harmful rather than helpful. I realize now that my desire to support and protect my son led me to violate his fundamental rights to privacy and autonomy, she wrote. No parent has the right to make such decisions for their adult children, regardless of their intentions. Dad's legal separation became a permanent divorce, and he moved to Portland to live near his sister Grace Chen, finally free from decades of emotional manipulation and control. Our relationship grew stronger as we learned to communicate honestly, without the interference of Sarah's hidden agendas and surveillance. I should have protected you from her controlling behavior years ago, Dad told me during one of my visits to Portland. I kept telling myself she meant well, but good intentions don't excuse harmful actions. Kelly and her husband Tom became partners in my new consulting business, which I'd started using settlement money and my experience with authentic communication strategies. Tom handled legal compliance, while Kelly managed client relations, and we built a practice focused on helping companies develop honest, ethical marketing approaches. Emma joined the consulting firm as head of digital strategy, and our personal relationship flourished in an environment free from surveillance and manipulation. We'd learned to value transparency and consent as the foundations of both our professional and romantic partnerships. We have something real now, Emma said during a weekend trip to the mountains. A relationship built on choice and honesty rather than orchestration and control. The consulting business grew quickly as companies sought authentic alternatives to manipulative marketing practices. My experience as a surveillance victim gave me unique insights into how technology could be used ethically rather than exploitively. The Digital Privacy Rights Foundation helped hundreds of families dealing with similar surveillance situations, providing legal resources and counseling services to people whose trust had been violated by family members. Many cases involved parents using tracking apps, hidden cameras, or monitoring software to control their adult children's lives. Your willingness to fight back created a precedent that's helping other people escape from family surveillance, Patricia Wells told me at the Foundation's first annual fundraising dinner. Sometimes standing up to someone you love is the most loving thing you can do. On Christmas Day, almost a year after the devastating revelation about Mom's secret company, I hosted dinner at my Denver apartment for Dad Kelly, Tom Emma, and Robert's sister Grace, who'd flown in from Portland. The gathering felt genuinely warm and honest, in a way that family events never had when Sarah was orchestrating them. We shared stories about our lives without worrying about hidden cameras or secret agendas. Dad talked about his new job with an environmental nonprofit in Oregon. Kelly described her plans to expand our consulting business into sustainable marketing practices. Emma discussed the Foundation's upcoming digital literacy program for teenagers. Everyone contributed authentically to the conversation without performing for an invisible audience or protecting carefully constructed lies. The relief of genuine communication was profound. As we cleaned up after dinner, I reflected on how Mom's betrayal had ultimately led me to discover my own strength and values. The painful revelation of her surveillance and control had forced me to examine which relationships in my life were based on truth and which ones were based on manipulation. I'd learned that real love requires respect for boundaries and autonomy rather than control and supervision. True support means providing opportunities while allowing people to make their own choices about how to use them. The settlement money had given me financial independence, but more importantly, the legal battle had given me personal independence, the right to live my life according to my own values without interference from anyone who claimed to know what was best for me. The Foundation's work was helping other families learn the same lessons about the importance of consent and respect in relationships. We were creating resources to help people recognize controlling behavior and find the courage to establish healthy boundaries with family members who crossed them. Looking back on the traumatic year, I realized that Mom's attempt to control my narrative had backfired completely. Instead of making me the unwitting star of her success story, her surveillance had turned me into an advocate for privacy rights and authentic relationships. I'd found my own voice by refusing to let someone else write my story, even when that someone was the person who'd given me life. The work I was doing with the Foundation felt more meaningful than any career opportunity Mom could have arranged through her connections. I was helping other people reclaim their right to privacy and autonomy, values I'd learned to cherish through my own painful experience of having them violated. As I locked up my apartment that night, I felt a sense of peace and completion that had nothing to do with external achievements or family wealth. I'd built a life based on honesty, consent, and genuine relationships, the things that had been missing from my existence when every important decision was being made by someone else. The documentary that was supposed to make me famous had been destroyed, but the real story of standing up for privacy rights and family boundaries was still being written through the Foundation's work and my consulting practice. Most importantly, I'd learned that the most valuable inheritance isn't money or opportunities. It's the courage to live authentically and the wisdom to protect that authenticity from anyone who tries to take it away. Have you ever discovered that someone close to you was living a completely different life than you believed? How do you think families can balance supporting each other with respecting individual privacy and autonomy? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more content about family relationships and personal boundaries. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing about the importance of consent in family relationships, please share this story with them. Thank you for listening, and I hope your own family relationships are built on the foundation of honesty and respect that everyone deserves.